Is Mitch Marner forcing the hand of the Maple Leafs this year? We'll discuss that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? No hockey. What are you doing with your life?
I'm sad. I have to do chores now around the house to get.
It's so bizarre throughout the year. I mean, working in sports, it is. People think that. I mean, it's a great job. Don't get me wrong. It is fantastic. I'm not going to complain. I love what I do, but I don't have a lot of free nights because I have to be in tuned and watch the games. That's what my job is. I got to watch the games. So the way that I operate is I can't necessarily go out to a bar or go to a buddy's place, or I kind of need to just be glued and I'm taking notes during the games and whatever. And it's not just the Leafs, it's kind of everything and everyone. So, my nights are often occupied by sports watching. And now we're getting down to the nitty gritty where there's no Raptors, there's no Leafs, there's no hockey in general until Saturday. You got the Blue Jays, and right now they're not that fun to watch, to be honest with you. And they got skunked last night again. It's my nights are getting pretty free. And I don't know what to do with myself, Dave. What have you been doing? What are you gonna be doing for the rest of the week, dog?
Yeah, I've been doing chores. I've been getting stuff done outside, and
hey,
it's sad.
That's productive. That's productive. I think I went for an hour and a half long walk last night. That's what I did at 8 o'clock. Where usually I'm sitting there watching a game. I was like, I'm just gonna go for a walk, throw a pod on in the old ears, and go for a little stroll downtown Toronto. Didn't run into any Maple Leafs, by the way, in case you're wondering. No Maple Leafs, no Craig Berube sighting while I was doing my little walk down by the harbor front. We'll get into some Leafs chatter. There's some rumblings out there. LeBron wrote a piece, and he included a couple of, I guess, updates from what we kind of discussed yesterday about Mitch Marner and what might be happening with him coming up this year, and also Joel Edmundson. A little bit of a conflicting report from the report we heard from the fourth period.
Dave Pagnotta.
It was Dave Pagnotta about Joel Edmundson yesterday. So we'll kind of get into those, and then we're going to power rank the remaining Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup final, the former Leafs in the Stanley Cup final. And there's really only, we'll say, 4 technically playing, but we decided to include Jack Campbell, and we decided to include Evan Rodriguez, who spent about 48 seconds in the Maple Leafs organization. But technically, I believe he is a former Maple Leaf, even though he did not play a single game for the team. So we've got 6 guys, and we're going to power rank them from 1 to 6, who are the best former Leafs remaining in the Cup final. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But why don't we start with the Maple Leafs news and start with the LeBron rumblings. I love reading these pieces. Gives you a nice insight into what's going on around the league. And it was up on The Athletic, and it's not just LeBron, it's not just Marner. They were talking about, Jake Gensel, and talking about a whole bunch of other, newsy topical items going on in the NHL. But we did pull a couple of nuggets from this little Mitch Marner blurb from Pierre LeBrun. And essentially, it's very similar we talked about yesterday, but it sounds like LeBron pulled the curtain back a little bit more, and basically flat out said that it sounds like Darren Ferris and Mitch Marner. Darren Ferris is the agent of Mitch Marner. Have no indication that they would even entertain a trade. They're not going to present a list, and he plans on honoring the final year of his contract and seeing how things play out. And it was even interesting that it's even mentioned in here that there might not even be appetite to talk extension come July 1. The preference from the Marner camp is to start the season and see how things go. Interesting. What do you make of that, Dave?
Pulling that right out of the book of Darren Ferris's wonderful mind of hockey agenting.
Yeah.
Literally this Tommy Gaudreau 2.0 situation right now.
Was Ferris Gaudreau's agent?
Yep.
Nice.
Darren Ferris does not have a lot of NHL clients. That's not to say he's not a good agent, but he doesn't have like a huge Rolodex of, I think he has like 15 players right now. But like you look at the players, I think it's Marner. Marner's like his big
Edmundson.
client.
Edmundson's his agent too.
Yep, he's also for Edmundson as well. I'm pretty sure he was. No, sorry, I'm wrong. It wasn't Gaudreau. Gaudreau was.
Yeah, he had the same agent as Nylander.
Nylander's agent is Gaudreau's. Louis Gross.
Yes, that's why I was confused. It's like I find it the same as Nylander, but
Darren Ferris is going with the Louis Gross approach. We'll go with that.
Well, I mean, every agent kind of does the same thing where they're trying to do the best for their client, which obviously means they're doing the best for themselves. The more money the client gets, the more money that the agents get. So, it's a competition out there. And look, that's what makes this very difficult when you look at Mitch Marner and whether or not they sign him to a contract next year. I mean, there's not only competition on the Maple Leafs between Marner, Matthews, and now Nylander getting his big hefty pay raise. Like the agents are looking at that and they're competing with each other. Hey, I got my guy this. I got my guy that. And now, Darren Ferris is going to look at what was Nylander's agent Louis Gross got Nylander. And he's like, I'm going to outdo you. Like there's competition even within the agents, right? So when you look at Mitch Marner, it's like, that's. That he's going to want more than what Nylander got. You just know that's what he's going to want. It's not even that he's going to want it, but the agent's going to demand it. And Marner's obviously not going to say no to more money. So it's really going to be interesting. But I don't think that Mitch Marner is not that he's not capable of playing out the year, but I think it's more dangerous for Marner to play out the year than it was for Nylander. Like Nylander's just cool as a cucumber. Like that guy, pressure doesn't exist in Nylander's world. Marner, however, look, ultimately, the guy has seemed to struggle when the pressure hits its heights, and if he's playing in a contract year without one, and when the fan base starts to get on him, the media will start to write about things. It usually doesn't go well for Mitch Marner. So I don't know if that is the right call for him.
Well, yeah, it's not like Mitch Marner has great composure when it comes to the media asking questions that are quite personal and quite that he probably wouldn't want to answer. He also, I mean, the good thing with William Nylander when he was going through all that contract talk, especially at the beginning of the year, he was doing pretty good for himself when he was scoring, right?
Yeah.
Like his play didn't drop off, and that's probably why, in a way, the contract stuff was going in the right direction for him. With Marner, we know he's had his tendencies to have, slow starts or not great, stretches, and that could kind of balloon, in the wrong way for him. And this is why I don't understand that approach, and that's why many people a few weeks ago, especially insiders, are saying we don't know if Marner will want to deal with that. Like they were kind of in a way saying that, like Marner doesn't see, like, why would Marner want to deal with that charade of having to constantly talk about his contract?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. if he could probably do the exact same thing that Nylander did, do the exact same thing that Matthews did.
Mhm.
Come in day one of camp if he doesn't have a contract and say, "Today's the last day I'm talking about it until it's complete." Obviously, my agent is handling it behind the scenes. I've got really nothing to do until we're close to a deal, and I'll sign whatever. So you can ask my questions today, but after today, it's not happening. So like the media, I think, will not bring up the contract like that. And look, the media have been good with that when it came to Nylander, when it came to Matthews, in respecting that, because ultimately it's not going to go anywhere because they're not going to say anything. Like, what's Mitch Marner going to talk about his contract every day? He's just not going to. Um, the fan base will definitely talk about it. You and I
Yeah.
will talk about it on these shows, but he's not going to be, peppered with questions about it and festered on a daily basis. But it's going to be in the back of his mind, the fact that he doesn't know what type of paycheck he's getting or where it's coming from or where he's going to have to live next year. And sometimes that could weigh on people and it could
Mhm.
force him to have a tough and difficult season. So it's going to be fascinating to see what ends up happening with Mitch Marner this summer. But if they're willing to play out the year and basically force the Maple Leafs to either give him a contract at the end of the season or walk, I will be curious to see what Brad Treliving does. Like it seems like that could be like a move. Now that like the way that came out of my mouth, it kind of sounds like that's a tactic for Darren Ferris and Mitch Marner. It's like you're daring them to.
Yep.
It's like, well, you don't want to lose me for nothing, so you got to sign me now. Like once the season's
Yeah.
over.
They're playing the Nylander card, right? Like you're
No, like
daring.
I don't think it's a Nylander card. I don't. I think it's completely different. And it's the Gaudreau card, which are two different. It's
Yeah.
different. I believe it is different. Like
I
Nylander is just like, yeah, that contract's that's gonna get sorted
right.
out. It's all good. Like Marner's like, hey, let's play out the year, and then at the end of the season, it's like you're either gonna get nothing for me or you're going
No.
to pay me
Yeah.
what I want. Like using it as a negotiation tactic, his UFA status. I don't know if Nylander necessarily did that.
Yeah, that's fair because Nylander, I don't think there was really any indication that Nylander was considering leaving. Like
No.
he may have known that he always wanted to be in Toronto, and so I think that's fair to say. And I think with Marner, it's a dangerous game because, like, yeah, Johnny Gaudreau got a decent contract with Columbus, but he's not exactly thriving either. So I think it could be a tactic in a way for the player. Sometimes it's also like, let's see what's on the other side of the other side there of how that always works out for the player too, right? As much as the Leafs don't want to lose them for nothing, you also don't want to feel like you're being handcuffed to do something you don't want to do.
Right. And, there's plenty of examples of that working out for players, but also plenty of examples of it not working out for players. Speaking of players that may want to see what's out there on the other side, Joel Edmundson. Conflicting reports about what his objective is over the next couple of weeks here leading up to free agency. So we'll get into that and we'll get to our power ranking of the former Maple Leafs remaining battling for Lord Stanley. That's all coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and more. I was taking a look at the odds today. The Florida Panthers minus 130 to win the Stanley Cup, to win the series over the Edmonton Oilers. But then that means there's plus money on Edmonton. So if you believe in Connor McDavid, you can get some plus money odds over on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you on a Tuesday. As per usual, we are a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast. We got new episodes coming out each and every weekday morning. So make sure that you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and also up on YouTube for the video format. and get your daily dose of Maple Leafs all the way, even here through the off season, through the summer, and it's going to be a busy summer. Like we were talking about how much of a bleep show this summer could turn out to be, and I think it's going to be very pivotal for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, I think so too. Like you've got the Marner situation, you've got the goaltending situation, you got the blue line situation. Like there's so many things that
Tavares.
right? Tavares, what goes on with him? There are so many avenues in which this Leafs team could go and how they handle their offseason that like it's going to take time. I think we're noticing this now. This Leafs team is not in any rush to get stuff done other than maybe the coaching. I thought like the coaching search was kind of done in a timely manner, but like the rest of it, I think they're going to take their time. Brad Living doesn't scream to me as a guy that wants to rush into anything, as you saw with last year with even the Matthews contract took some time. Nylander, well, that took longer than maybe they would have liked, considering they went into the season. But yeah, he doesn't scream to me as a GM that wants to rush into anything specifically.
Yeah, even like he said that Keefe was going to get a contract extension, like when they decided they were going to keep him around for another year, and even that took like a month to actually hammer out the extension. So it's like, yeah, he's just kind of a slow moving, methodical cat. So we'll see what he can get up to, but yeah, it doesn't sound like much is imminent. I guess we could say even so, like when he got Berube, yes, Berube hiring him was quick, but it's been a slow burn to find out who the assistants are going to be. I mean, we spoke about it yesterday, so you can go check out yesterday's podcast on the two names that are currently now the front runners, I guess we could say, and Dave Lauer and Lane Lambert. But yeah, it's been a slow burn when it comes to Brad Treliving and his dealings and what he's got to do here in Toronto. But it's interesting because a lot of the decisions like kind of have tentacles, and it determines what else you can do. Like we talk about Mitch Marner, and all right, if he forces the hand of the Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner wants to play the year out, okay, so that's $11 million of your cap space that you won't be able to open up, and that okay, that's a forward position in your top six that is you don't have to fill, which means it's not open. Like how much would that impact what the Leafs do with Bertuzzi and Domi, do you think?
Oh, huge, right? Like you have to think about with this Leafs team and where the priorities lie and decisions, right? I think like with the Leafs, the reason why they're trying to get a gauge on what Domi and Bertuzzi want is, can we even afford to do it based on what other things we have to get done, right? This is why, as much as people are saying it's nice to hear that they're doing the talks right now, the reason why you're not going to hear anything being imminent is because I don't even think the Leafs want to make those commitments right now, because you don't know what, like you look at what they need to get done. They can't project completely what other players on free agency might want. Like, let's say they want to go after Chris Tanev. They don't know what exactly Chris Tanev is going to want in a deal, or even like a Brett Pesce. You can forecast.
You believe that, Dave? You honestly believe that?
I mean, you don't know what other teams.
You don't think? I don't know who Chris Tanev's agent is.
Are you
You
talking
don't
about?
think a quick text has been thrown out there saying, "Hey, hypothetically, like, what do you think it would take to get one of your, 33-year-old rugged defensemen in Toronto?" And you don't think a number was exchanged in what he'd be asking for? I'm sure they have an idea. But anyways.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if they have a semblance of even just a range, but at the same time, there could be players on the trade market. I think that's the big one there too. A goaltender that could become available that they have to make that money work.
Yeah, I almost look at it like I don't even like that. That seems like, yes, that is 100% true and factual. You got to look at what's going on in the market and what's going on with with trades and goaltending and whatnot. But even like, do you see this team going forward with a long-term contract in place for Nylander, Marner, Bertuzzi, and Domi? Like all four of your top six wingers kind of locked up long-term? Like
No.
I don't know if that's really possible to have all 4 of those guys on long-term deals. Like
It's
that,
not a
that's like
reality that a lot of
if
teams
you break
have.
it down, like it's almost this. Yeah, it's not a reality that any team should have to have those guys locked up long term, especially at the numbers that were thrown out there last week from LeBron's rumblings. Which I don't know if you saw I think it was Darren Dreger did a hit on Overdrive, maybe Friday or maybe it was first up actually Friday morning, I think. Kind of putting some cold water on the numbers that LeBron was reporting on the Domi deal. I don't know if he necessarily flat out came out and said Tree Living said that there's no chance that was happening, but that's almost what he insinuated. His conversation with Tree Living about those numbers basically said like, where did Pierre get those numbers from? If that's what the agent is asking for, then they can go elsewhere, for lack of a better term, and for to put it in my words, not his, obviously, is what it sounded like. So sounds as though yes, Domi, if he's asking for that 5-year, $5 million deal, it's not here in Toronto, by the way, which good. I don't think that he is worth that kind of money or that kind
Nope.
of term, to be quite honest with you. But still, even if it's whatever, like 2-3 years at whatever, I do find it tough to envision a scenario where the Leafs have Domi, Bertuzzi, Marner, and Nylander all locked up to um, long-term multi-million-dollar deals. Without even looking forward, without even looking at the trade market, the free agent market, whatever, just looking at the cap structure of the team itself, it just looks like it just can't happen.
Like there's a reason why Bobby McMahon was given that contract. There's a reason why they've kept Matthew Nyes around, even though they could have probably traded him at some point to get some immediate upgrades. It's also because those guys can be placed into the lineup at a cheaper rate that allows you to fill out the rest of your roster too, right? Like you got to also look at what you have internally, right? Easton
Cowan in
Cowan,
the next couple of
Fraser
years.
Minton. Look at your internal options. Say, do we need to go out and spend money or make it a priority to bring back players when we might have internal options that might do what we need at a cheaper rate? I don't want to make it seem like they're cheaper players, but they're cost-effective players that can do. Like I have no reason to think why Matthew Nyes can't have a good year considering what he did last year. Why Bob McMahon, when he was in this lineup in a good position, can't do more than maybe what we had come to see from him beforehand. So those are things I think they're also going to have those conversations as well.
Right. Can we fill these out for cheaper, essentially? So that's why I think the Marner decision is very keen, and knowing what they're going to be doing with Mitch Marner, not just next year, but in the future. Like, is there a future with him? Because if so, then there's probably not a future with Bertuzzi and Domi. You probably got to pick one. But if Mitch Marner's not coming back and you trade Mitch Marner, and that's the plan, is to move him this offseason, that you could probably bring both of those guys back into the fold. So it's the Marner decision is definitely going to play a pivotal role in how the team attacks this offseason. And with Marner, if he apparently is not willing to move, waive his no move, and he's going to play out the year and maybe walk and see what's out there afterwards. That's tough for the Maple Leafs to stomach, because it could impact how they are forced to do things or won't be able to get things done this year. But we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. On the other side, we'll get into the Joel Edmundson report and also power rank our former Maple Leafs currently bidding for Lord Stanley in the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll get to that next. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti at the helm. So yesterday there was a report from David Pagnotta that Joel Edmundson, the Maple Leafs defenseman that they had traded from at the deadline, trade for at the deadline rather, he had reported that Edmundson Although there was interest in the Maple Leafs in talking contract extension, it seemed as though Edmundson was keen on testing free agency to see what's out there. Pierre LeBrun in his Rumblings piece, a little bit of a different report here, a conflicting report, if you will, where it sounds as though Edmundson actually does have interest in talking extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs. What do you think an extension for Edmundson looks like, Dave?
I think if you're gonna try to get someone like Edmundson, you're gonna probably have to give a little bit of term. Like I don't think it's there's no way around that, considering if he's saying, well, I can just go and get it in free agency if you're not gonna offer me term. So I think he's gonna look for like a 2 to 3 year deal. I don't think they should go more than 2.5 for Joel Edmundson. Like that would be kind of my bottom line there per year.
He's an interesting player. Like he's coming off a contract where he just made $3.5 million. I think it was like a 3 or 4 year deal, 4 year deal at $3.5 million that he signed when he was with Montreal. Went to a Stanley Cup final that year too with the Montreal Canadiens. That's after winning a Stanley Cup with the
St. Louis Blues.
With the St. Louis Blues. But like he's been in the 3 million range his entire career. I don't know if 2.5 gets it done. Like it feels like he's gonna need $3 million. Like he's kind of a unique player in a way, just because of his size. Like just not a lot of 6'5", 225-pound defensemen out there who technically can play both sides, who crunch dudes the way he does, and is effective on the penalty kill, and block shots the way that he does. So he's got a lot of really good attributes. I would like the Maple Leafs to bring back Joel Edmundson, but yes, it is going to depend on what the ask is on his side. I personally think he's going to need to see something that starts with a 3 though to entertain that offer, because I think it's probably out there elsewhere for another squad.
That's fair.
And like I said, he's been making $3 million isn't basically for the last 5-6 years. I don't think that he's declined in the last 5 years. Like he's been the same guy. If he's a $3 million player, he's a $3 million player.
And look, you're not bringing back TJ Brody, and that was a $5 million ticket. So if you replace TJ Brody with the $3 million player in Joel Edmundson, I don't hate that, because right. I understand Joel Edmundson is not a top 4 guy. I understand that, but what I mean is like guy that can play on the penalty kill, guy that will play the tougher defensive zone minutes. That's what you're bringing Joel Edmundson for. If it takes a little more to get that done, and if it means Craig Berube thinks that he can, Joel Edmundson would be a good fit for what he wants to do, by all means. Because again, they've nickeled and dimed too much on the blue line the last few years. They got to start properly investing in some stability there.
Yeah.
And they don't have options. And you can't look and say, oh, can we find a Joel Edmundson replacement internally? They don't have it.
No, they absolutely do not. I mean, I guess that Cade Weber guy, but like, I don't know what he's all about. He hasn't
played college last year. Hasn't even played in the NHL yet. Or I think
exactly. I can't recall.
Actually,
he was with the Leafs.
I don't think he was actually eligible to play in the AHL last year.
I don't know if he was, but I know he was like with the Leafs, practicing with the Leafs, and he was like with the team as an extra throughout the playoff run. So, it's not like he went right to the American League after signing in college. So, but I'm just saying, like, no, he's not really an option. I'm just saying he's a big body boy. Just like he was. I think he's a left shot too. So, he's got the body of a Joel Edmundson. Definitely doesn't have the body of work or a resume like him, obviously. But yeah, that's gonna be fascinating one to watch as well. Kind of what happens with Joel Edmundson. We'll have to take a look at the list of free agents too. Like, is there another defenseman out there that maybe makes a little bit more sense for Edmundson? perhaps, that might be something that we could take a look at as well. But for now, apparently talks are ongoing. Both sides have interest in an extension, a long-term fit between the two parties. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thought he played well once he got to Toronto. All right, Dave, let's quickly roll through this. All right, we've got 6 players technically that we are using for our power rankings. So we got to go 1 through 6. We're ranking the former Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup final. We've got Zach Hyman, we've got Connor Brown, we've got Carter Verhaeghe, Cody Ceci, Jack Campbell, and Evan Rodriguez. And you know what, Dave? I'm looking at the time. Do we want to just save this for tomorrow?
Let's save it for tomorrow.
Why don't we save it for tomorrow? I realize it's funny. We like pull the curtain behind. Dave and I are like, man, it's not a lot to talk about. So we're like coming up with all these. We end up going 30 minutes. We didn't even get to the one topic that we're like, okay, we could talk about this. Everything else was kind of just, we thought quick reports, get through it, and then we'll spend time on this power ranking. And look at us. We were able to yap away for 30 minutes and not even get to it. And we could push it to tomorrow because we don't got Stanley Cup hockey until Saturday. So we literally have all week to continue teeing up and previewing the Stanley Cup final in different ways. And this is just another way for us to put a Leafs angle on previewing the Stanley Cup final. So come back tomorrow. We'll power rank these guys on tomorrow's show. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Leave a like and a comment as well if you would enjoy that. I know I would. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.